My name is Ando, and I'm an artist, a photographer, and a member of the Undergang. Every week, I sit down with an artist, a curator, a musician, an author, or anyone else working in the creative fields, and we talk about their work, their life, and what it takes to keep fighting the good fight in our world today. Welcome to the Undergang Armchair. Hey gang. Is it weird that I call you gang? But I feel like calling you guys gang. We're all part of this gang, right? So, hi gang. How you guys doing? We're making it happen here. It's episode 13. Can you guys believe it? 13 episodes in already. It's happening. We're happy. We're looking forward to hitting 100 episodes. Hitting 200 episodes. We're for real. We're fucking serious, guys. So, dig in. I am a little disappointed with y'all. Last week's interview with Jonathan Mayes was awesome, and I want more of you guys to listen. So if I may be so bold right now to ask you guys to tell a friend. If you like that episode, tell somebody else. And that counts for any episode, but let's get some people to listen to Jonathan Mayes. That was a really great chance he gave me to speak with him, and I think we got a good result out of it. So help me spread the word. Let's get that one out there. Once again, we're lucky to have another very interesting artist who was willing to take the time to talk to us. We've got Asger Carlsen today. And if you don't know who he is, well, you're about to find out because he is really good. And it's interesting doing this podcast. There's becoming this whole narrative running, which I hope you guys are picking up on. It's certainly becoming very much a reality for me. It's crazy. I was talking last week about, I've been talking a lot about engagement and then talking with Jonathan Mayes about how a lot of art is too easy. It's too accessible. Things need to be challenging and to be, you need to work somewhat for it because if it's just too easy, you're going to forget about it. It's not going to go forward. It's just not going to make a mark in your brain. So it's perfect that Asger Carlsen's our guest because here's a guy whose work I have seen a lot in the last 3 or 4 years, up close. And I haven't really given it the real mental shakedown. I haven't really tried to come to terms with it. I've looked at it. I've wondered a lot about it. It's work that leads the viewer to a lot of questions, not answers. But I kind of didn't jump into it all the way. And I did, in this interview and talking with him, understand more about how the work came to be, what his ideas are behind it, what it means, and it's a perfect textbook example of work that isn't exactly accessible right away. You need to chew on it. You need to get in under its skin, and you need to, in my case, it's very lucky I can ask the man himself and develop an understanding. And, he's moving away from photography. He's moving into the realm of 3D objects, into constructions. He's inspired by surrealistic painting, and you'll hear all this. I won't give it all away, but this is important. This idea that artwork does need to challenge you, and you need to step up to the challenge. You'll at least get a lot more out of it. Have a relationship with art as you will, as you want. But you're going to get more out of artwork that you engage with, that you try to have a discussion with, which you try to understand. What is the artist thinking? It's too easy to say, my child could have done this, because you're dismissing any intention by the artist. You have to ask that question to get the full experience out of it. So this is perfect. This narrative continues, that discussion about what is important in artwork, how do you make lasting artwork, what is the point behind it all, etc., etc., etc. So, this conversation's great. And, I think there's an important undertone here of not overthinking your work and working in a studio practice, just being more hands-on. As a photographer, there's a lot of Photoshop time, there's a lot of computer time, there's a lot of thinking time. it's good to work also in a studio manner, like painters, like people who make sculptures, like sculptors. What do you call it? Sculptors. Drawers. Anyone who has a studio they can walk into, grab something, and start making artwork on, without any preparation, without any thoughts. And, before you guys send me a bunch of emails, I'm well aware that photographers can do that as well. But the point is, engage on a physical level. That could actually, help produce a lot of work. It could help you move ahead. So I think there's also a good undertone here. There's a lot of stuff we can learn. That's the question we need to ask ourselves. What can we learn from this? And this interview taught me something. I hope it teaches you guys something. I would also strongly suggest that if you don't know his work beforehand, just stop this right now and go check it out. His website's on our show notes. It's asgercarlsen.com. I think it would help contextualize a lot of the stuff we're talking about if you just know some of his work. So go look at Hester, go look at Wrong. You can also go look at the collaboration between him and Roger Ballin. Just familiarize yourself before we start because it'll really help you understand what's going on there. And that's it. Please enjoy. You still do?
I still pretend, yeah.
Pretending's important. I mean, because who really knows what they're doing 100% of the time?
No one, I think. I mean, I don't know, some days it's just more, you're just more sure of yourself.
Right.
Other days you're just like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Right.
I don't know who I am.
That's absolutely true. Is that a common thing? Does that come up a lot?
I think so. Some days you're just more confident.
Yeah. There's some days where everything works, too, and there's days where it just doesn't.
I'm telling you, this show we're going to talk about, I hated a couple of days ago. I just absolutely hated it.
Was that the day after the opening, or what?
It was probably the day I arrived here, which usually has to do with jet lag a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like being jet lagged, it's like sort of dilutes your mind a little bit.
Right, it just depresses your brain levels and everything.
I mean, it's kind of like being hungover.
Totally. It makes sense though, because I was talking to Jonathan Mace, and he was talking about how if it's not, what did he say? If it's not hard, it's probably not good too. So you could look at it like it's a good sign that you're not even 100% sure, because then it's maybe too easy.
Yeah,
maybe. I mean, that depends on a personal process, of course. But.
Right. This has to do with many things. I haven't seen the show for a while, which is about a year, and.
Right, you made the work a couple years ago?
Well, this show was actually completed a year ago.
Okay.
I mean, it was completed more than a year ago, but it was shown in Germany about a year ago. In it's a entire version, and so I hadn't seen it for a while, and then I just forgot about how. We already too ahead into the conversation.
We can jump around. I mean, I know what you mean, though, because if you put work away for a year or two and then revisit it, often you're just in a completely different space. Right. And you're not focusing on finishing it anymore. Yeah. There's a certain mind state when you're working on finishing something, and then when you forget about it, you see it kind of, not new, but from a
also because, there's a very much an obsession. There's an idea of an obsession in this work, I can see.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed about making it. And so when you sort of leave that stage, it's sort of you enter a more normal self.
Right, more passive.
Yeah.
So did you get it out? Did you do the obsession? You did it?
I think so.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the goal, right?
Yeah.
To beat the shit out of something until.
Yeah, totally. And I was just going over all the pieces, and I still find them sort of like, as far as like technically, they're really. I'm still happy about the result.
They look amazing. I mean, technically, you've nailed it. You couldn't have done it better. And I think we'll get to that. We better go back a step. let's go all the way back. You grew up here in Denmark, right?
Yes.
In North Sjælland. Mm-hmm. I met your brother. I spoke with him.
My twin brother.
Yes, your twin brother twins.
Very important.
Very important. Okay, well, yeah. Why is that important?
We were born at the same time. We were very connected, and
right.
we have a lot in common. And we do the same. We both work in the art world, so
right.
I think that's kind of rare.
Totally, and you guys do both separate things, and there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I mean, he does drawings and he, paintings and installations, but I do photography, but we still work with the human figure. So
right.
in that sense, we are very much in common.
Right. So I mean, you guys grew up together. You got into all your trouble together. You guys probably had the same friends, or a lot of the times the same friends.
Yeah.
But at one point, you decided to get into, or you got interested in photography. Mm-hmm. How'd that happen?
So I guess it happened during high school, and the way I started, I was here in Denmark we have internship during our high school time, which is a couple of weeks.
Is that like a try out different things kind of thing?
Yeah, okay. Definitely. So one of my picks was a newspaper. As a photojournalist or press photographer, as it was called at that time. And so I interned there for a week, and after that week I just kept on showing up, basically, and it was a small newspaper, and I guess they really didn't notice it, or I guess maybe they liked me or something. But I started to offer images for sale.
Okay.
Like different events.
To the newspaper?
Yeah. So, and they actually, to my big surprise, they started buying the images I was offering.
So you became a freelance photographer before you knew what a freelance photographer was?
Kind of. I mean, I saw it as, I was drawn to it because I like photography. I wasn't sure of what style or, anything at that time because I was so young. I was just drawn to the idea or the lifestyle,
right?
Or the life you could live as a photographer.
Well, that's great. I assume during that week you had an internship, you got to take pictures.
Yeah.
Because I imagine a lot of interns when they get a job, they make coffee, they run photocopies, maybe they stand in a dark room, like it was back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like when it's during the school time, like high school time, they really have to take it seriously, and they have to assign you.
Okay, so they make an effort to have you try the real job.
Yeah, it's not like the States where they actually take advantage of you.
Right, where it's just free bitch work. Yeah.
This is a socialistic country. You can't take advantage of people like that.
Well, God bless.
God bless Denmark.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great, and I don't know, were you like me? I'm actually a photographer, maybe you don't know, but like me, I decided that I wanted to do photography before I had the chance to do it. Mm-hmm. I knew I was interested. Was that the same thing for you?
Yeah.
You just knew that was something which maybe could attract you?
Yeah, I was just drawn to making pictures, and I didn't know, I wasn't aware for what reason. I just liked to
right.
I don't know, this subtle way of expressing yourself without really having to explain yourself too much.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, photography is,
and I still feel that about making images. It's it's a very precise and subtle and not too specific way of saying what you stand for.
Right. Well, I notice you play with that too, because photography is still in our day and age presented as reality.
Yeah.
For the most part, and so, like you say, it's a subtle way of expressing yourself because, in theory, it's just a snapshot of reality. It's a capture of reality, and the manipulations that go on behind it still, to most degrees, are invisible. But, okay, so you did that, and then what, you stopped going to school? You just started going to the newspaper?
Well, this was sort of end of my school time, and so I ended high school.
Okay.
And I was just, my school time wasn't really a success. And so I sort of knew I wouldn't continue
right.
Going to school or college or whatever,
right.
Gymnasium.
Yeah. Right. So what grade was this that you?
This was probably 10th grade or something.
Okay.
So I sort of just kept on showing up at newspaper, and I started offering them images as a freelancer, and after doing that for a couple of years, they actually hired me. I got a contract with the newspaper.
You just stuck around enough, and they were like,
Yeah.
"Okay, well,
they got
you're
used
good
to
at
me,
this."
and then all of a sudden one day they needed me,
Right.
because I guess I became kind of good at it.
Right.
I was doing a lot of police stuff.
Okay.
Meaning you're like a police scanner, and you would respond to sort of different events. Like,
So you'd sit and listen to the scanner, and then something would happen, and you'd jump on your bike and race down there?
Yeah.
Ouija style?
Yeah. That was sort of the way to get into newspaper business at that time. I don't think anyone is doing that today.
No. Now it's Twitter, I guess.
Yeah, it's Twitter. There's something else,
Right.
or Instagram.
Right. That's wild. So essentially...
But this is 1990. Yeah, this is 1990.
So you're just a kid showing up at crime scenes and photographing, and the police are just used to photographers, I guess, showing up?
Yeah.
Or is it kind of a
Yeah, they
constant?
are, but I mean, I guess looking back at it, I was kind of young for showing up to those kind of events. But
Well, you got
anyway, they accepted me to some. I mean, I had to learn sort of the rules. How you sort of interact or act at those kind of events.
Some sort of unspoken code.
Yeah.
So you did that. You stuck with it and kept doing that for a while, or what?
I was working for them for about 7 years. During that period, I started working for other newspapers too as a freelancer.
Okay.
And a lot of the national newspapers here in Copenhagen, I started freelancing for too. So after 7 years, I moved in here
Into Copenhagen. Yeah.
And I pretty much freelanced for all the big newspapers.
Were you in the darkroom too, or is this one of the deals? Okay, so you had to develop your own film?
Yeah.
Was it kind of shotgun film developing, where you do 10 rolls in 8 minutes, and then put it through the dryer and get it ready for press really fast?
It was but the newspaper had a good setup. It was a legit setup, so it wasn't like a hairdryer or anything.
Right, because I hear all the stories about the
too.
last minute, like getting the film dry before.
We had to move fast for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much about getting the exact perfect development. It was about getting all the information that needed to be there.
Yeah, I mean, the printing quality was kind of not the best for a newspaper, especially not at that time.
Right.
So, I mean, it was more about getting the image, the final image ready for print. Right. Rather than like perfecting it because, I mean, let's be honest, it wasn't really an accurate, how do you say, like, translation of the image.
Sure. Yeah. Right. It's the screen printing or whatever you call that process. But okay, so here you are as a police photographer. I imagine every once in a while you're seeing some pretty intense stuff.
Yeah.
Dead bodies, that sort of stuff. And that's no big deal?
It is a big deal, and then at the same time, it's when you're out like sort of on an assignment and you have your camera, it sort of works like as a shield in a way.
Right.
Sort of you can hide behind the camera.
Right.
And you're really out there on a mission, so you're not just a spectator standing there,
And I guess you know what you're going to see too beforehand.
You kind of know, but I mean, you see some pretty rough stuff for sure. Yeah.
It's just interesting because jump ahead now to your exhibition and the work with the body and all that stuff. I wonder if there's any connection.
Not really. I mean, what I'm showing here, it's very inspired by certain painters and people who work with sculptural arts and. Not so much linked to what I saw at that time, I would say. But then again, I would say from doing that job back then as a newspaper photographer, you get very familiar with reality,
right? And
what a real scene and how to sort of direct a real scene or set up a real scene,
right?
So you have that reference, which is a very good reference to have, I think.
Well, it's an interesting kind of beginning angle for photography.
Yeah.
Me and most of the people I know started in school doing, faux art projects. Mm-hmm. We literally were told, okay, this week do a landscape photography. Here's some Ansel Adams books. Here's some Minor White books. Go. You know, and the next week they'd be like, do a Gary Winogrand street project. Here's what these look like. Go. You know, and it never was police scanners, midnight bike trips out. You know, it wasn't that real in that sense. So it's an interesting angle to come at.
Yeah. I mean, I still think it's like if you have to set up an image and that's sort of depicting a real scenario, that's a really difficult task. You know, it's really difficult to make an image look like it has that sort of instant, familiar, all those elements. Yeah,
the truthiness.
And it doesn't come off as like a sort of a stiff portrait of a person or something.
Right. Right.
That's a really sort of thing. Like, you know, like you can see that sort of moment that happens between you set up something up, you put a person in a corner, and then you're trying to direct them, and then there's that moment that's sort of just the real moment,
right?
Not that moment you're sort of directing people to,
right? That you're setting up that is unnatural.
Yeah,
yeah. There's who was it? Oh, somebody wants to shoot. I know a photographer who shoots films now instead of cameras because he knows he can find that moment in a film, those moments in between, because just taking pictures, it's so hard. I mean, he shoots Polaroid, it's slow, it's laborious. It's hard for him to find that exact unaware moment with his subjects.
Yeah, I think a lot of photographers can recognize the fact that if you shoot a whole film or a series of images, the first image you take, or the second, or whatever, like when people are not ready or whatever, it comes off as sometimes the most interesting image.
Totally.
And that's a lot of times that's the image that I would end up using.
Okay.
Because it's not into that. It doesn't get to that moment where, oh, your arm is in this direction. Can you please
lift your chin up? Or
you know, and all of a sudden people are so stiff that they can't.
Right. And they're like camera. You know.
People are so tense, and I mean, so that's really talking about like what this work is not about being a straight up photographer, because it's so many images compiled and post production, but
you are working with the human form.
Yeah.
But you get to pick and choose, I guess, parts of an image. You know, if you just need a leg, then it's hard for a leg to look unnatural. I guess
this is also down to the way you crop your image. So.
Right. Where was I going to go? Oh, right. So you're making police photos. How did the transformation start to happen? Do you thinking about other methods of photography, other ways to use photography, or were you always thinking about that?
I did that for about 9-10 years, and it naturally ended for me because the newspaper industry around 2000 really went down, and there was not that much work anymore. And at the same time, I became more interested in shooting portraits. You know, portraits where you really had time, and they were printed in better publications, so as magazines. So I started working for magazines and ad agencies. And
okay. Was it like? Did you consider that art? Or was that still freelance work?
Was it art or freelance work?
I mean, I know there's a blurry line between them, but in your mind, were you making work for yourself and presenting it to be published, or were you working freelance for a magazine to produce?
I was working for money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I guess my ambitions were higher, and I wanted to have more time making photographs rather than having to do 15, 20 jobs a day, which is, a common thing as a newspaper photographer, especially when you work for a smaller newspaper.
So just in and out, deliver, go back out.
5 minutes to shoot this person or less or something.
It's kind of tough conditions to work under.
Yeah. But I also became more interested in the German school of photography. The Düsseldorf school, I guess that's what they call it.
I've heard about it, but I don't know much about it.
It's Gursky, it's Thomas Roof, Thomas Struth, Thomas Deman.
Got it.
I think August Sander was from Düsseldorf too. Okay. I think actually he was the sort of inventor of that sort of scene, which is way more sort of withdrawn, pull-back camera way of photographing.
Right.
I mean, you're not shooting wide angle, and you're more like observing your subject or
from
your landscape.
A distance.
Yeah, and you shoot with a larger format. So that sort of thing.
So you started studying, essentially, other work. And so, ever since, I assume you're still working freelance also?
Not so much anymore. I still do commissions for certain magazines.
Okay.
But that's more in relation to my artwork. So it's not me showing up in my portfolio, but they actually contact me and want me to specifically create something that has a relation to my artwork.
Right, do that thing that you were so good at doing. Well, that's great. I mean, that's the dream, right? To get to the position where...
That's the best way of working.
Yeah.
It doesn't get anywhere better, I think.
So, New York, huh?
New York.
When did that come into the picture?
Around 2000, I transitioned into be more interested in working for magazines, ad agencies, and around 2006, I was called up by an agent, a photography agent in New York, and he asked me to come over for a meeting. And
okay. Based off of work he'd seen on the internet, in magazines?
Yeah.
Great.
And I signed up with him, and he also gave me a working permit, a visa.
Right, that you could stay in the U.S.
So certain things happened in my life around 2006 or something, and I just was kind of, I'm just going to move to New York.
You were ready.
I just did like sort of a spontaneous thing.
Right.
And I didn't know how long I wanted to stay there, but now it's been 7 years.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And you like it, I assume, of course,
yeah.
After 7 years.
I like it. It's very different what I do now from when I arrived there, but...
Were you this guy picked you up. Were you then working essentially freelance for him, or what was
so
his
the way
racket?
It works, like he promotes me, and so whenever we get a job in, it would be handled by him, and all production would be taken care of as well. Oh, and work is a lot more production oriented in the United States. You have even for a small magazine assignment, there's still like a production and a lot of people involved. That's
makeup staff. Yeah.
So there's a lot of handling. So you really need, if you work on a high level in the United States, you really need an agent to help you out.
Right.
Especially coming from another country and just being dropped in the middle of it.
Right. That's
There's
awesome
legal stuff, and a lot of legal stuff too.
Sure, you can get the shit suit out of you in the U.S. for just about anything.
Just because you have to shoot on a street corner in a building, you have to.
Right, New York has the no tripod rules, right?
I don't know if they still enforce it, but it was at some point you had to.
I remember reading that you had to get a permit to use a tripod in New York, which is just
silly, right?
It's so America.
Yeah. So, anyways, I was very lucky from the beginning. Work and got a lot of jobs, and I managed to shoot for pretty much all the big magazines in the United States, and so I had a good time from the very beginning.
But you really wanted, in your heart, to work on your own images.
I guess I'm not sure if I wanted that. I was just interested in basically. Having fun. That sounds maybe...
Well, is it fun doing those big productions? I mean, I'm sure it is in the beginning, but does it remain fun?
I gotta say, I enjoyed it okay, but the best situation for me is to just be more in control and not having... just work on myself and not having too many people involved. And especially in the States, there's so many people involved. And for me, that's not... a good way of working.
I find it very stressful, the world of professional photography.
It's very stressful. There's a lot of pressure,
There's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of...
And there's a lot of money and a lot of pressure involved. And
I knew a guy in California who was getting to be a pretty big, famous portrait artist. He photographed Keanu Reeves and stuff, and he got hired to do a shoot in Mexico with Shania Twain or some rock musician, and he forgot his passport on the way to the airport. And missed his flight, and that was it. That was it. He never really worked again as a large. I mean, I don't know what I've missed. I don't know him anymore. Really? But for years after that, he didn't get any phone calls.
Right.
Because he fucked up and didn't show up to a $200,000 shoot or something. Right. And I just thought, man, I forget stuff sometimes.
Right.
How that's such high stakes constantly. So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
That's why it's good to have an agent.
True. They can
remind you.
Right.
To bring your passport.
Right.
To the airport.
Yes.
It's essential.
Yeah. Don't fuck it up. Yeah. Well, okay, so how did it happen? I mean, part of this podcast is talking about the practical aspects. Mm-hmm. How did it happen that you could make the transition from working as a professional photographer to now working on your own projects? There's financial considerations in that. How did you manage that change?
So, I don't know how I managed that. I don't know how I survived.
There
was times where I was pretty stressed out.
Yeah,
I would say.
But that means you stuck by your guns.
Yeah.
You stuck to it.
Yeah. But it was so when I did this first sort of image in this style, it was just I don't know, it was such a relief for me, like to realize I could just do that, and I had I felt it was very much me, and it was like it was a way for me to sort of it was the best way for me to sort of express the direction I wanted to go, and the images I sort of liked, and the
what a great
it just made me basically happy,
right?
And
I mean,
it all happened sort of by mistake. I've always been accused for spending too much time in Photoshop. Mm-hmm. Like always, people are like making comments like, "You spend too much time. Just get on with your life.
Chop chop. You gotta get it done."
Yeah. Right. But I was just always like, I wanted the photograph to be something else than just a photograph, and I was always trying to edit it and edit images in a way so it could sort of escape the immediate story of the photography, of the photograph. Mm-hmm. And I guess I couldn't accept. I wouldn't accept the story that the fact that it was just a photograph.
Are you getting away from the camera? And what I mean is, obviously you can't avoid the camera. It's a photograph, and it's still labeled a photograph. Mm-hmm. But this desire to continually influence the image after the picture is taken, it seems like it's a step away from the actual camera itself. I
guess already at that time I wasn't aware of it. I always saw it like there's a you have to go out and photograph, but that's a very little part of like the actual sort of result,
right? Absolutely.
Or the actual outcome.
Absolutely.
I realize a lot of photographers just see as the time or the actual period where they're out photographing that's it, and afterwards
sure, you might do a little color change, a little cropping,
that's
some
it,
contrast.
Nothing will change after that.
That's right.
And I guess there was many reasons I didn't feel that was creative enough for me, and I realized that there's painting artists that has a studio practice, and I wanted to see if my practice could translate into being a studio practice rather than being an external process,
right,
or practice,
right.
So having a studio practice was something I was very focused on.
I mean, like you said, you like to work alone. So I kind of imagine you in the studio. I read that you'll take a picture of yourself if you're missing something. Yeah. I imagine you sitting up late at night, Photoshop, like crafting, sculpting. It's like you said, you're interested in sculpturist, work, that you're sculpting digitally.
Yeah.
3D images.
I think so. I mean, I think it's more about, it's less about being a photographer. I don't think as a photographer anymore. I feel much more related to people who work in as painters, or people who do drawings or sculptural art.
That's wild.
Because the actual process to go back to how it came, it was actually just a mistake. It was like me playing around with a cloning tool, and all of a sudden I was like working on this guy's face or portrait, and I had this picture with multiple eyes, and it was just such a revolution for me, and I found it.
It kind of vibrated.
It sort of scared me so much that the first couple of images I did I didn't show those images to anyone for a year.
Wow, you just sat on them
because they were so different from the photography I was doing at that time, and I was striving to be a commercial photographer and making it in the commercial industry, and for me to show these images would be almost self-destructive,
right,
and contradicting to the direction I was heading.
Totally. Well, I mean, people are really tired of the commercial photographer who dreams of being an artist in their heart and has a little catalog on the side of their landscape photography or something.
Yeah.
No one gives a fuck. It's like, no, you're a commercial photographer. Just don't even show me that.
Yeah.
Because unless you're going to do it seriously,
yeah,
no one cares about a half-assed artist.
But just to say, I did not have a set ambition about becoming an artist or an art photographer.
Do you have a set ambition now?
Yeah.
When did you admit to yourself?
A couple of years.
After I started working, or what?
Yeah.
I mean, because you made these images, you had them in your brain, just sitting there for a year, and I mean, were you just thinking like, I don't know what to do with this? It's fascinating. I can't stop.
Yeah, but I also saw that it was so anti-photography.
Right.
Those images, and it did not make sense for me to sort of present them in a commercial setting.
That's true.
But I guess it happened. I showed the images to my friend Peter Funk, who's also a partner here at V1 Gallery. And he said he really liked them, and they had a group show, a photography group show at that time, and he sort of asked me to finalize the pieces, and we put them in the show, and I guess that really changed.
That opened the door.
Yeah.
Did it feel good?
It took me a while. I guess it took other people also a while to really appreciate the images.
Well, they're very unique. I've never seen anything like it.
And thank you. And so the first images was strictly they came from archival. So it was like archival images, images I have photographed over many years, and there was images I liked, but I didn't know how to sort of put them into, at that time, my current portfolio at that time. But they were still good images. So I just went through my hard drives, found all those images, and I also started building props. So a lot of for my first project was Wrong, which is, have you seen that project?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So the real challenge in that project was more building the props.
Was that like these things? They look like foam.
You see that thing, like the
right? Yeah. They look like I don't even know how to describe it. But yeah, it looks like
so
a foam mound or something.
So all these objects, and that's when I realized I could just stay in my apartment.
Right.
I didn't have to leave my apartment, and that was really a happy moment when I realized that. I just stay in my apartment and work by myself, and it's a very convenient thing because you get up in the morning and you don't have to travel anywhere, you don't have to call people, you can just start working. So you get more out of your time. Yeah,
I mean, I guess there is a lot of, at best calling it networking, but just like making sure everything's in place. Yeah, get into the shoot, having extra batteries, the whole thing is.
There's and just like the travel time.
Right.
And the travel time and the research.
Right.
And finding your subjects.
Right. So Wrong is what came out of the first series.
It came out of the first series of old images.
Right.
Which might as well have been. I mean, that's also that was also very much a departure from what I was doing before that. Prior to that was that these images had a feeling of being found images.
Yeah, they do.
And you could question if they was really my images, and it wasn't really important for me to say this is my images. These are just images that I influenced.
Right, and they seemed like exactly what you say they are, that they were the ones that didn't quite make it to some sort of cut at some point. I love the picture of Snoop Dogg that you have in that series. That's in Wrong, right?
That's not wrong, but it sort of came out. That's actually made for the Vice photo issue 2012.
Okay, I love that one because Snoop is out of focus.
Yeah.
And there's just some dude, you can see that he's got his gorillas, his
bodyguard.
It's a bodyguard, yeah. And then, the focus just shifts completely, and you're like, what the fuck is that? And then you're like, oh shit, that's Snoop, But
it's not really an important image of Snoop, right?
At all, and no one would ever use that. You would never see the out of focus image of Snoop.
Yeah.
When have you ever seen a picture of him out of focus? And so that, to me, that series, I guess that's not Wrong, but Wrong in general and those images were really funny to me. Like I find them. You have a really wry sense of humor in those. And then now you've developed these ones. I think they're funny, but I'm not sure. Do you think they're funny? For this image for Hester? I'm
not sure either.
I kind of want to laugh, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they're funny.
They're not presented as funny.
I don't think they should be funny, but I guess some of them are funny.
It's both grotesque and absurd.
Yeah.
It would be the blackest humor.
Yeah.
But it's not presented as being funny.
I feel I can justify the work, but I have to say I'm not sure how I made it or how it came about. I know how it came about, but
Right. Well, it's fine for me. I understand you completely because I don't think we have to intellectualize everything or write.
No, don't get me wrong. I can explain it, but as the emotional aspect of creating the work, and then afterwards having to look at it, I'm not always sure.
Do you mean like you don't know what you mean by it?
I'm not sure why it's important, but then some days I'm very sure that it's important not because. I realize it looks really grotesque and bizarre and has those aspects, and it's hard to look at sometimes. But the adventure for me and sort of the exploring my skills and putting them into a new setting was just much more important for me,
right?
Than having to consider, is this too grotesque or
Well, I don't think it's too grotesque. But I think the question really, I guess, is, are you struggling with whether art in general is important or whether these works are important?
I really don't know what's art, but
it's a tough one.
It's a tough one. But I think these are important because it's they play with so many aspects of everything. They play with sculptural art. They play with photography. And I think they're very hard to define.
Mm-hmm. They are.
Like, what is it?
They are. In fact, for anyone who's listening to this later on, just go look at them, because you're not, the whole context of it is the images, and you can't explain what they are, really.
Well, essentially, I think they are installations in photography, or sculpture installations that has been photographed.
Right. It's a photographic presentation of a 3D object.
Or maybe vice versa. It could be...
Totally, because that's the thing. They don't exist.
Yeah.
Right? They do exist as a photographic object, which should represent a 3D thing, which doesn't exist in reality, except for it does. It's just blended together, But that's why I think this work is important. Yeah. That's why I think you shouldn't be concerned about that, because...
essentially, I would like that they could... first of all, I don't want to tell people how to perceive these, but I think they could be an installation that has been built in my studio, and then afterwards I have called up my good friend, who happens to be a photographer, And then he has been photographing these installations, and then that's how they came about.
Right.
Or maybe, I don't know.
It's a group project.
I don't know what it, you know.
Right. But I think this is good because it keeps coming up in the last few weeks. People keep telling me, art today is too accessible, it's too easy. If the work is immediately understandable, you're going to forget about it again. You know, I think that's why this is relevant, because people are actually bemoaning the lack of what do you say, inaccessibility. They're bemoaning that there's too much. It's too easy. It's too easy to understand. You can look at a work, you say, great, there it is, and then move on. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think the fact that these images are hard to pin down is their saving grace. Mm-hmm. You know, because in a way, I mean, you talk very little about the human form, and it is entirely based off the human form, this process. But,
I mean, it's so essential because it is, the material is you and I, you know.
But it sounds unimportant to you. Is it important that it's a human thing?
I mean, I think they have an importance, you know, in so many aspects, and for me, I mean, there's so many ways I could explain. I mean, people often ask me, so why these naked bodies, and why is it females, and why is it not men? So the reason why it's naked bodies is because I didn't want it too much reference to anything in terms of time or fashion. Mm-hmm. I wanted that not to be important, and the reason why it's female. Because the first image is created out of pictures I had from another photo shoot, and that was a female. So that's how it started. And the reason why I continue shooting females is because females have less body hair, and I don't think body hair it's not conducive to the aesthetic. That
makes sense. Yeah. You've got skin tones, continuous skin tones going throughout all of it.
That as well, and a lot of men tend to have too much body hair,
right?
And it would just simply be too repulsive. I mean, I think they struggle too much, and it would refrain from the idea that this could be a material of that could be looked at as marble, or you know, maybe it's wax, or
right. Well,
there was some guy in here just before you came who asked, "Is this wax, or what is it?"
Right.
How is it? You know.
Well, you could produce 3D. You could make sculptures, wax sculptures from this,
and then photograph them.
Yeah, sure.
You know, which is such a compliment.
But the more we talk about this, the more I love this work, because at first, you know, like I've seen these images a lot because I work at the frame shop where a lot of them get framed. You know, and people's reaction, you know, people walk into the store while we're framing them and just go, "What the fuck is that?" Mm-hmm. You know, and for let's say 50% of the people, they'll just go, "Whoa," and then shut it off. Don't want to know. Don't want to talk about it. Don't want to look at it. It's over. And then the other half will actually just stand there in silence in the middle of this busy frame shop and think. You know, and you can see the brain, the gears clicking, going, okay, so it's obviously human, but it's obviously Photoshop, but it's also not obviously Photoshop, and, you know, is it sculptural, is it, you know, and that's the process which I think is fantastic about these. And the more we talk about it, you talk about body hair, that to me makes me think of, like classical marble sculptures. Mm-hmm. This is art history, you know, in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so what this all leads to in my brain is, what's next?
What's next?
You know, because you're going in a direction which either you're going to leave your camera behind eventually, or, you know, you're going in a whole third direction here, where it is photo-based sculpture. Mm-hmm.
So what's next? I mean, I have so many projects in the pipeline.
Okay,
that I want to do.
Cooking.
There's too much stuff I want to do. I'm for the last Vice photo shoot, I started a collaboration with another photo artist called Roger Ballin.
Right, the South African.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about this.
He's very cool, by the way.
Yeah.
When I first saw his work around 2000, I bought one of his books, and I was, you know, just really fascinated. There's a couple of photo artists I've been fascinated by. And
it's black and white, right?
It's black and white. He is actually American, but he lived most of his life in South Africa, Johannesburg.
Yeah.
So it's black and white, and it's people in South Africa, and has very much an element of outcast from the apartheid system.
That's who it is. I know.
Originally, I was so sure that this was just like real people and real locations, and these were like South Johannesburg projects, building scenarios, whatever. I thought that for years, and then I realized that all these pictures are set up. It's not real situations, and it's not real people. He casted everyone. He found the locations, and he works with models, but he also does these like drawings in his locations.
Okay.
These sort of like cave-inspired drawings.
Okay.
Anyhow, I was a big fan of him, and for me, he's like Michael Jackson or something.
MJ.
So I always wanted to sort of. I had a couple of years ago. I got this idea it would be great to do a collaboration with him. So I was asked by Vice magazine to do something for the photo issue, and I suggested to them that doing a collaboration with Roger Ballen would be one of my top choices.
Nice move.
And so I emailed him.
Okay.
And he already knew my work, which I was very happy about.
Good, yeah.
And he also agreed to do the collaboration.
Does he live in New York? Or does he still live in South Africa?
He lives in South Africa, Johannesburg.
Yeah.
He's based there.
Okay.
So we did the collaboration. I produced a series of images of this girl, and I applied my sort of style to it, and I sent them to Roger, and he's not very much of a post-production guy. So his process was printing out the images, and he did his work on top of the prints.
His drawings.
His drawings, and he did like some cutouts, and I've never seen the original print.
Okay, so he scanned them.
He scanned them in and returned them to me, and then I finalized them sort of in post-production.
Is that done?
Made them
Is
ready
it
for
printed?
print.
Is it out in the world?
Yeah.
I
actually don't have it. I can find it here. You can see it.
Okay.
Anyhow, so we did like 6 images for that publication, and I think we were both very surprised that people liked it a lot.
Meaning it was purely for fun, and
it
turned out to actually be of interest.
I mean, I would love. I already knew I would love the collaboration to continue, but in order for it to continue, you need to have a certain level of success, I think. And
usually, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, people really liked it, and
they were published.
And we got like an offer from a couple of publishers, and so we sort of agreed to continue the collaboration. So now it's going to be a book, and we have shows planned, and it's very cool. I'm just going to show it to you here.
Have you made more images? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we only have the ones for the Vice photo issue online here.
Okay.
So we're not going to.
So it's coming up.
We're not going to publish anything before.
Oh wow!
Before the entire project is completed.
See, these are funny.
So
again.
it's very interesting. Sort of. Also for me, like being such a control freak about my work, I sort of have to give that away and
to give it up, right?
And give it up. But essentially, so it's extending into. So now it's like my images, and he's sending me images that I'm working on, and then they're going to be returned to Roger, and he's going to do some more work on them. And since he also he's so much into he does a lot of drawings. Like all these are like his artwork.
Right.
I am also producing drawings for him that I'm going to send to him, and he will.
So you guys trying
apply
to
work to
flip
that
it?
too. Yeah, but essentially it's just it's an exchange of postcards.
Right.
We're not
but
supposed
updated.
to meet. I mean, eventually I would love to meet Roger.
Right.
So we talk like a couple of times a month on Skype, and then to sort of decide the next stage of the project collaboration.
That's great. I think it's a good step forward. In terms of like, obviously it would not be a great thing if you made another Hester.
No,
Hester's done.
It's done, but let's see. I mean, the Hester is a really time-consuming thing to do.
Is it just thousands of hours?
Thousands of hours. I mean, I'll tell you one of the triptych you see out there.
Yeah, the big one.
It's like 20. The triptych on the left.
Okay.
When you come out. It's 20 minutes of photographing, and those 20 minutes becomes 2 years of work. But I think now I would be able to make it much faster.
Right, you're learning while doing.
I had to learn basically how to, in a reasonable way, to create a sculpture, and how it sort of works organically. And I mean, there's certain rules for how to build a sculpture. You can't just if you want to have like a sort of believable and organic feel to it, you can't just. There's certain things you have to obey. Right,
I guess you have to look at art history and look at masters and look at all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you call your brother?
He had a big influence on it for sure.
That's good.
He was my top advisor.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's I'm seeing this work here with Balin, and you, the listener, should as well. It's on Asger Carlsen's website. It'll be on our website as well. But I think this is a really good step, onwards.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to see in the future if you're just going to stop taking pictures at some point. If the camera is going to disappear,
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point I'm less interested in even being called a photographer, or like even presenting myself as a photographer. I'm also a little bit done with like working with the material, or I refer to it as my material, by the way.
Right.
And I would really. My problem is I have so many projects which is involving photography the next year, but I would just love to just make sculptures and sort of try that out for a little bit. And I am planning, and it's in the process of taking a couple of Hester pieces and creating them into 3D printing.
Yeah,
and making them into sculptures.
That did occur to me. That is, in technology nowadays, there's some options.
Yeah.
In terms of making 2-dimensional images 3-dimensional.
Yeah. And also, I wouldn't mind to actually one day make them into a marble piece too. But
I bet you can do that with a 3D.
It's
maybe not a 3D printer, but through a reductive process where it shaves down to something.
Yeah. It's definitely possible. So. In order to convince a potential gallery to help me finance this, I would need a good start, which could be a 3D printing, which is a reasonable thing to finance.
Well, what about? I mean, there's also money. I assume you can still apply for state funds in Denmark.
Well, if they're listening, they keep on declining my application.
Me too.
You get the same?
I get the no as well.
I haven't applied so many times, but the times I have applied, it's been a no.
That's a fucking, because you have no idea why. You have no idea why. You don't know if you fucked up.
I don't know. I always speculate, but I think maybe I have less or too little ties to Denmark.
I imagine it's a networking thing. I also imagine you have to get a no 5 times before they'll even consider you for a yes kind of deal.
But, I can't wait for that.
Right. None of us can, Danish state. All right, well, I guess we can start wrapping it up. Are you going to stay in New York? Is that if you found your home, or is it still just like a I'm here now kind of deal?
I don't know. Can you stay in New York forever?
I think New York's a city you probably have to leave at some point.
Yeah.
Or else you become batshit crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. New York is one of the world's most expensive cities. If you can afford a reasonable lifestyle, it's probably one of the best places to be.
Yeah.
But the constant grind just to keep an apartment, healthcare, God forbid you have a car, etc.
Yeah, it's stressful.
Do you live in Manhattan?
I do live in Manhattan, Chinatown.
You're winning.
Yeah.
You're winning. I mean, people can't live in Manhattan. Most people can't,
Yeah.
Unless you get rent control.
I like living in New York, but, it's not it's just, you're there for a time and then maybe you stay, but there's also a possibility you can't stay because you get tired of stressful living. And
a lot of people are moving to LA right now.
Yeah. I love LA. I was supposed to spend this winter out there, but then I got too busy. That was my big plan.
Yeah.
To move to LA for the winter.
Do you miss Denmark ever?
I do a lot. I mean, I was born here, so
and family and friends.
I have family, friends.
Do you still feel connected? I mean, I guess. Well, of course you do. But
I tell you what, I feel after being away for 7 years. I mean, I am essentially from Denmark. That will never change.
Right.
But when I'm over there, I feel very Danish, and I do talk about Denmark a lot.
Right.
But then when I come back, I sort of feel a little bit different, Just
Totally.
the way I speak and my priorities and...
Totally, and that I've noticed that myself when I go home too.
It's just, you feel a little bit confused.
And when
about what's right and where you belong to.
I feel like too, you tell people, you go home and you see your old friends, and you're like, well, in Denmark, or my case, in your case, you'd say, well, in New York, it's like that, and they just look at you like, yeah, asshole, we know, we're here, you're there, we know that,
I mean, also, I noticed I picked up with, a few, like, American viewpoints, maybe, or, the way...
Yeah, you're more into handguns now?
Yeah, I always carry a firearm. No, there's just a certain sort of social behaviors,
totally,
which is not accepted in Denmark. And then sometimes I just feel, did I just say something really American?
Right. Do you have a hard time with the telephone when you come home?
With the telephone?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I have a really hard time with ending telephone calls in Denmark.
Oh yeah.
There's a rhythm. There's a very specific Danish rhythm that goes ba-dump, 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 bam.
Ba-dump. Yeah, that's true.
Tak for nu. Det er godt. Det er godt. Ja, tak.
Yeah.
Ja, det er fint. Farvel. Or something like that.
I experienced the same thing. Like if in a social context, you meet people and you chat with them, and then especially in New York, there's a sort of a way like you pretty quickly realize it's going to be a long conversation or a short conversation.
Right. Does this matter? No.
And you talk to people, blah blah blah. It's nice seeing you. Hope to see you again, or at least you fake it or say I'll call you or something.
That's very American.
Next week, and you're never going to call that person.
Right.
Here it's sort of like people it becomes quiet and people just stand there,
and they just look at you.
It just becomes this sort of, and especially I like the American way, especially if you go to an opening or something, there's 200 people in a room, and you want to talk to at least 10 or 15, and you have 2 hours or something, and you really need to get through this.
Right.
And it works much better over there,
They're better at small talk, and they abhor a silence.
Yeah.
The Danish thing of just looking at someone, like I've said what I had to say now.
Yeah.
Either you say something or neither of us are going to say anything.
Yeah.
It hurts me as an American, I'm like, oh God, say something.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the awkward silence. It's just like you really don't, like, sometimes you really don't have that much time, and you need to move on.
Right. Right.
The same thing if you meet someone on the street here.
Right.
It really becomes this sort of thing. You have to talk to them for a long time.
Right.
And it's not like I dislike people or people I know or anything. Don't misunderstand. It's just like you
at this moment
you're on a roll. You need to move on.
Right. Right. And Americans understand that better.
And that works really well, especially in New York.
Yeah.
And in that aspect, maybe in many aspects, I feel I've taken on the American way a little bit.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for taking time to do this.
Well, thank you for showing up and asking all the nice questions. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
All right, that was a good conversation, huh, guys? I really got a lot out of that one. I think Asger's not a guy who kind of talks a lot. I've met him a few other times. He's a soft-spoken gentleman. I don't think he just talks without thinking, as I am known to do. So I think that it was great. He opened up. He told us a lot about what he does, and I hope you got all the points and you got all the stuff that I got out of it. I think that was great. Enough running my yap, I guess, is really the lesson. If you're here in Copenhagen, go see his show. It's at the V1 Gallery in Vesterbro. You can find them online. I'll put a link to on our show notes. The show's up until February 15th. Go see it. Don't shy away from it. Engage. I'm not even going to try to explain his work if you haven't seen it at all. So you might as well start getting into that to understand what his work is about and everything. He's also part of a show at the Photographic Center, a group show there called Beyond Realism. I told you guys about it last week. Go check that out. That's also here in Copenhagen. You can also see, we'll have a link on our show notes to the collaboration between Asger and Roger Ballin. That's definitely worth seeing. You can see a development in style. I mean, it's obviously a collaboration, but you can see how he is taking his work onwards, also by engaging someone else, but his personal style is moving onwards. And, it's interesting to see he's starting to do drawings, he's starting to think about sculpture. This is one to keep an eye on, guys. That's my point. Keep an eye on stuff. There's good stuff out there. And other than that, I want to ask you guys to help us get the word out. We're expanding. We want to expand more. We're greedy as hell. So if you like the show, tell a friend. Tell somebody on Facebook. Tweet. Do whatever you got to do. Helping the cause. We appreciate it. Especially since we are in the process right now of trying to apply for some money to keep this show free and without commercials. That is the absolute plan, to run without commercials. And that's that. Show, as always, is produced by Undergang Unlimited. I am your host, Ando. We would love it if you'd check us out at undergang.net. Got all sorts of exciting stuff on there. You can also email me, my personal email address, ando@undergang.net. Let me know how we're doing. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you got someone for me to talk to. Or just let me know whatever's on your mind. I'm into that. Interstitial music today provided by Monroeville Music Center. Link to that on the show notes. And as always, the intro and outro music provided by Heavy Links, British hip-hop group. There is a link to them, link to Heavy Links, on our About page. And that wraps it up for today. We got more exciting interviews. We got more people. We're starting to reach out there. Let's keep this ball rolling. Oh yeah, and it's snowing here in Copenhagen. And isn't it just magical, that snow? Thanks, guys. See you next week.